The Mandalorian Season 3 is the most disappointing thing to come out of Star Wars in years. Yep, I said it. Is it as bad as the Book of Boba Fett? No. Is it as bad as the abomination that was Obi-Wan Kenobi? No. But The Mandalorian Season 3 is a massive decline in quality compared to its previous two seasons. Now don't get me wrong, that's not me trying to say that the first two seasons of The Mandalorian were that good either. It's not like they were Emmy-worthy by any stretch of the imagination, but you could always count on The Mandalorian to be a solid 7 out of 10. When The Mandalorian first came out, it was one of the first things that came out of Disney Star Wars that didn't suck. Although the first two seasons definitely weren't masterpieces of television, they were able to capture the hearts of so many after so many years of shit being pumped out by Disney. But since then, we got The Book of Boba Fett, which was terrible and extremely damaging to The Mandalorian because it undid everything that Season 2 of Mando accomplished. We got Obi-Wan Kenobi, which destroyed, well, a lot of things. Then we got Andor, which I'll admit was pretty decent. And finally, we got The Mandalorian Season 3. Now you may be asking, if Mando Season 3 wasn't as bad as Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, then how is it the biggest disappointment Star Wars has had in years? When Boba Fett came out, it came out in a time slot that most people thought that Mando Season 3 was going to come out, so for most casuals, they just saw it as filler before The Mandalorian returned. As for Obi-Wan, anybody who was following that show closely to its release knew that it was going to be a flop. All the story leaks that came out prior to the show basically confirmed that it was going to be terrible. Combine that with the fact that Kathleen Kennedy had her hands all over the show, so you knew it was going to be woke, and they gave full creative control to a woman who was way out of her depth for taking on a project this massive. There was a lot of hope for Season 3 of Mando, though. Their first two seasons were successes among fans, and it was also coming off the back of Andor, while not financially successful, very well liked among critics and fans alike. Even the same people who were in charge of the first two seasons were in charge of the third, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. But what we got was an unfocused mess of nothingness. God, I really don't know where to start with this season, so I guess I'll go over some of my overarching thoughts about Season 3. The first thing that pissed me off is how almost absolutely nothing happens across 8 entire episodes. I will admit that the last 2 episodes were noticeably better than the first 6, but it was not enough to save the season as a whole. Also, the Darksaber in this show is worthless, and just a waste of time. What is the point of introducing a mythic weapon from Star Wars lore into your show if you're going to do nothing with it? They have been teasing this thing since Season 1, and by the end of Season 2, Mando wins it in combat. But what is the point of him winning the Darksaber, then struggling to wield it in the Book of Boba Fett, and struggling to grasp the weight and responsibility that comes with owning that sword, and not have him overcome those challenges? Eventually he's just like, "Oh, here you go, Bo-Katan. I guess you briefly picked it up to save me from some monsters, so you can have it now." What the fuck? Why would you give it to Bo-Katan? She already had it once and failed to lead her people. Why are we doing this again? Writers, don't you think that him overcoming all of those challenges that come with the Darksaber would have been a good character arc? Are you dumb? Well, yes you are in fact. That's why you didn't do it. But the biggest thing of all that makes me so upset is that Din Djarin as a character this season was awful. This man, this season, has no character arc whatsoever. Here's an idea for an overarching character arc that spans across 3 seasons. The once lone Mandalorian gunslinger, who cares about nobody or anything except for his next paycheck, has a drastic mentality shift when he comes into contact with a helpless child. Through caring for the child, the Mandalorian starts to realize that there is a lot more to life than the work that he has done for so long. The Mandalorian and the child go on adventures together, and are able to come in contact with other Mandalorians who have been scattered across the galaxy after decades of war. When the Mandalorian comes in contact with a mythic weapon that can reunite his people, he takes up the burden, and after much struggle and other hurdles to overcome, the once lone wolf has now become the king of the Mandalorians, and leads his people into a new age of Mandalore. Now they did some of that. They did the first 2/3, that was the first 2 seasons, but they just didn't do the end of it. You can't tell me that the end of that story arc wasn't set up perfectly by the first 2 seasons. All they had to do was just do the last third, but they just didn't do it. They did nothing. Din Djarin, for most of this season, feels like the sideline character in his own show. For most of the season, he just feels like Bo-Katan's sidekick. Why? This is his show. This is The Mandalorian. Why isn't Bo-Katan his sidekick? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's most of the overarching stuff. Now let's look at each episode individually and analyze why this season sucks. Episode 1, or Chapter 17. I knew this season was probably going to be bad after watching this episode. Remember what the pilot episode of Season 1 was like? Yeah, that was pretty fucking awesome. Remember the first episode of Season 2?
Wait! Mando! You can't leave me like this! Cut me down!
That wasn't part of the deal.
Wait, what are you doing? Mando! I can pay!
What happens in this season opener? Yup, jag shit. So basically, Mando goes back to Navarro because he wants to see if he can revive IG-11, because he wants to take him with him when he goes to Mandalore. But sorry man, you can't. He's dead. Well, that sucks. Oh, and he also gets chased by pirates for 5 minutes. But moving on. Episode 2, Chapter 18. Alright, seems cool. Decent start. Walking. Some more walking. Pointless action set pieces. Oh, shit, he came out of nowhere. More walking. Let's take a bath. Well, that's an interesting tease. I wonder what the payoff will be later in the season. Spoiler alert, there is none. Episode 3, Chapter 19. Oh, hold up. Wasn't that guy in the first season? Wasn't he the doctor guy? I wonder why they brought him back. I can't wait to see what the payoff will be. Spoiler alert, there is none. God, this episode was dull. Episode 4, Chapter 20. I will admit, there is a lot of scenes that I did like in this episode, but I hated the whole concept around this episode, because the whole episode is this stupid kid who gets kidnapped by Big Bird, and then they all gotta go save him. Episode 5, Chapter 21. This episode honestly just feels mid in every way possible. There are these pirates that want to take over Navarro, and the Mandalorians gotta save them. Okay, interesting enough. But these pirates are so cornball. Like, this dude is a talking bush. The action is pretty forgettable, and the whole episode just feels like filler. Episode 6, Chapter 22. The Mandalorian and Bo-Katan travel to a planet ruled by Lizzo and Jack Black. They then have to help put down some battle droids that have been acting naughty lately. The episode ends in my local park with some CGI ships in it, and Mando gives the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. Oh, buddy. Moving on. Episode 7, Chapter 23, and Episode 8, Chapter 24. I honestly saw these episodes more so as a Part 1 and a Part 2, so I'm just going to lump them together. These episodes, as I stated earlier, were a little bit better than the rest of the season, but they definitely still had some issues with them. Like, first of all, surprise! The Empire's here, and they have a massive base that nobody knows about. It's almost like you could have foreshadowed that a little bit, so it didn't seem to just come out of nowhere. Also, why does it feel like this final battle is supposed to be something that the whole season has been building up to, but it just wasn't? Oh, the Darksaber is gone forever. Thanks for serving next to no purpose. God, what a missed opportunity. Guys, I really tried to like this season. I really tried. I wanted to like this season. But the people making Star Wars nowadays are for the most part just hacks. It sucks because I can pick out little things that I like here and there. Like, I like this scene.
You are the leader of the war party. You have the honor of staying by the fire. This is the way.
And this scene. And this scene. But it's just not enough to overcome the terrible writing that the show has as a whole. It sucks that we've now gotten to the point where I expect every Star Wars project to be bad. It's gotten to the point where I think Star Wars will never be the same again. It's lost forever. What was once the grand vision and idea of one of the greatest artists of our time has now just become another IP on the Disney conveyor belt. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. I'll see you next time.